For centuries, I mean thousands of years really, humans have walked outside in the dead of night, tilted their heads back, and just looked up at that massive, glittering expanse of stars.
Oh, yeah, it's a universal human experience.
Right. And we've all asked some version of the exact same question. You look at that cold, beautiful void, and you wonder, is this all just some random accident?
Exactly. Or, is the universe a giant mechanical clock that someone just wound up, set on a table, and then walked away from?
Yeah, or is it an actively managed, perfectly calibrated system? And that's the mission of today's deep dive. We're exploring a profoundly detailed commentary on verses 3 through 6 of chapter 10 of the Quran.
And it's fascinating because it tackles that ultimate binary we try to impose on reality, right? Chaos versus control, abandonment versus active administration.
We really do like to force the cosmos into a neat little philosophical box.
We do. Humans find it deeply comforting. But as soon as you start really examining the mechanics of reality, the physics of it, the history of it, that simple box just completely shatters.
Which brings us to the core of what we are unpacking today. What we have here is a thinker's deep dive into the creation and, crucially, the ongoing management of the universe.
Right. The ongoing part is key.
So to you, listening right now, sit back. We are stepping into the cosmic control room because the thesis we are exploring today completely upends the traditional view of cosmic management.
It really does. It flips it on its head.
We are going to look at the ultimate stability of the universe through a concept known as the Arsh.
Right. And traditionally, people translate that word as throne. They picture like a literal physical chair somewhere up in the sky.
Yes, a big gilded chair. But the source material we are examining today firmly rejects that. Instead, it posits the Arsh as the central processing unit, the ultimate CPU of universal law.
I love that analogy. The framework the commentary provides is brilliant precisely because it strips away all that medieval anthropomorphic imagery.
Right, it updates it.
Exactly. It takes concepts that are over 1,400 years old and decodes them into a language that sounds strikingly like modern systems engineering and astrophysics.
It's wild.
It takes us from the formation of nebula all the way down to the inescapable weight of human free will. The entire text is basically a sustained argument against a universe running on blind, random autopilot.
So the commentary begins this journey by tackling the very foundation of the physical universe, right?
Yeah.
Specifically the concept that the heavens and the earth were created in 6 days.
Right. The Arabic word used in the text is Ayyam.
Ayyam, okay?
Huh.
But right out of the gate, the thinker aggressively refutes the idea that this means a literal 24-hour solar day.
And that refutation is grounded in pure, undeniable logic. I mean, the text points out the absurdity of applying a solar measurement to a pre-solar reality.
Because the sun wasn't even there yet.
Exactly. A 24-hour day is simply the time it takes for the Earth to complete one rotation on its axis while facing the sun.
Right.
So if you were talking about the creation of the universe before the sun exists, before the Earth has even formed, before planetary rotation is even a concept, measuring that process in 24-hour increments is entirely meaningless.
It makes zero sense. So the commentary defines Ayyam not as solar days, but as epochs, right?
Immense periods, vast evolutionary stages of development.
It's a massive shift in perspective. And the broader text connects this to another Arabic word, dukhan.
Which translates to smoke or hot gas.
Smoke, yeah. And the commentary aligns this ancient terminology with what we now understand through modern cosmology. It describes the universe starting in this formless, superheated, gaseous state.
Like a nebula.
Exactly. From that nebula, over these 6 immense Ayyam or epochs, it gradually cooled, solidified, and formed into the highly structured physical reality we occupy today.
What is particularly compelling about this section of the source material is why the thinker spends so much time clarifying this timeline.
It's not just pedantics, is it?
No, not at all. It isn't just an attempt to reconcile a 7th century text with modern science. The commentary is making a profound theological and psychological argument against the tired clockmaker theory. It is directly challenging the ancient, widespread belief that the Creator needed a day of rest, a Sabbath, because the act of creating the universe was physically exhausting.
The psychological implications of that are wild to think about.
They really are.
The commentary forces you to consider what it actually means to believe in a God who gets tired. A deity who, needs to take the weekend off.
Right, who just punches out on Friday.
Yeah. If your ultimate concept of power is something that depletes, something that suffers from fatigue, that colors your entire worldview.
Absolutely. The text explicitly contrasts this fatigued deity with its own vision, an inexhaustible, infinite source of energy that doesn't just build the universe, but actively sustains every atom of it.
Continuously, without a single moment of drowsiness.
Exactly. And the commentary goes even further by contrasting this active, untiring administration with the mythologies prevalent in the ancient world.
Like what?
Well, it references paradigms like certain historical interpretations of Brahma, where the entire universe is imagined as nothing more than the dream of a sleeping deity.
Oh, wow. So if he wakes up, we all just vanish.
That's the implication, or the idea that the cosmos is just a theatrical play, a drama enacted for the amusement of the gods.
And the text has zero patience for those ideas.
None whatsoever.
It states categorically that this universe is not a game. It is not a cosmic playground, and the physical laws aren't just dream logic that can shift at any moment.
Right.
And the thinker uses this to explain human behavior in a way I found incredibly striking. The source provides this vivid analysis of primitive idolatry.
Oh, the idols part. That's fascinating.
And asks, why did ancient tribes build these terrifying, bloodthirsty idols? It specifically mentions statues carved from black stone, adorned with human skulls, featuring these long, grotesque red tongues.
Yeah, and the thinker argues that those idols were not just artistic choices, they were psychological mirrors.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. A barbaric, lawless society that survives purely on brute force, raiding, and terror, they will inevitably conceptualize a god of brute force and terror.
Ah, I see.
They project their own chaotic, violent mentality onto the divine. If the tribe's chief is a tyrant who rules by fear and arbitrary whims, they assume the creator of the universe operates the exact same way.
Which means you can never feel secure.
Never.
If the universe is run by a tyrant who might change his mind because he's angry or tired, there is no stability. But the text presents the exact opposite, right?
Yes. It outlines a creator who operates strictly on wisdom, a god of order, governed by unchanging, deeply reliable laws.
That distinction is the bedrock of the entire commentary. Because, if you believe the universe is ruled by a capricious deity who throws lightning bolts when annoyed, you try to appease that deity with blood sacrifices.
Exactly. But if you believe the universe is governed by an untiring creator who establishes fixed, rational laws, you don't perform a blood sacrifice.
Right.
You study the laws. You become a scientist. You try to understand the mechanics of the system you've been placed in.
Okay, let's unpack this. I really want to dig into that concept of studying the system. Because if the universe wasn't slapped together in a literal week and the creator didn't just wind up the cosmic clock and take a nap, what is the ongoing activity?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. If the universe is a finished product in one sense, but still actively managed in another, what exactly is happening right now?
Well, that inquiry leads us straight to the most pivotal and, frankly, the most fascinating metaphor explored in the source text. It brings us to the reinterpretation of the Arsh.
The throne. That is how almost every traditional translation handles it.
Right, a massive gilded chair in the heavens.
Yes, and the thinker we are analyzing spends a significant amount of time dismantling that literalism.
Oh, completely. The commentary delves deeply into the linguistic roots and the historical, contextual usage of the word Arsh.
Because language is tricky like that.
Exactly. It points out that human language relies on physical metaphors to convey abstract concepts of power. Like, in English, we might say, the crown passed a new law.
Right. We don't mean a literal piece of jewelry made of gold and velvet drafted a legal document.
Exactly. The crown signifies the ultimate authority and administration of a state.
So saying the creator established himself on the Arsh isn't about sitting down to rest. It's about taking the reins. It's the assumption of total active control over the cosmos.
Precisely. And to support this, the text highlights a critical recurring phrase in the verses, Tadbeer-ul-Amr.
Tadbeer-ul-Amr.
Yes, which translates to directing, administering, or executing the command. It signifies that the universe is emphatically not running on autopilot.
It's actively sustained.
Yes, and every physical process is being directed toward a specific, purposeful destination.
This is where the CPU analogy from our source material really clicked for me.
It's a great way to visualize it.
Think about a computer's central processing unit. When you look at a functioning laptop, you see a smooth, stable interface. But underneath that, the CPU is executing billions of instructions per second.
Right, without you ever seeing it.
Exactly. It runs the operating system flawlessly, strictly based on the code programmed into it. The commentary is arguing that the universe has an underlying operating system, and the Arsh is that central processor.
It is the locus where universal laws are continuously executed without a single glitch or, a cosmic blue screen of death.
And the philosophical implication of that stability is staggering. The text points out a nuance in the language that is easily missed. The creator binds himself to these laws.
That is such a crucial point.
The Arabic phrasing implies that he has prescribed this methodology upon himself. He is not depicted as a cosmic dictator sitting on a throne, changing the rules of physics on a whim just to show off his power.
He is the ultimate guarantor of cosmic stability.
That blew my mind a little because that exact concept, the unyielding stability of physical law, is the fundamental prerequisite for science.
It is.
If gravity could just randomly invert tomorrow, or if the speed of light changed depending on the universe's mood, we couldn't exist, let alone launch satellites or cure diseases.
No, it would be pure chaos. Science only works because the CPU of the universe is utterly reliable.
The thinker reinforces this by exploring a vital linguistic distinction in the ancient Arabic terminology, right? Specifically, the difference between two words, khalq and amr.
Yes. Both relate to creation, but they describe entirely different phases of the process. Khalq is the initial stage. It is the act of planning out the proportions, bringing the raw material into existence from nothing.
It was like the hardware design.
Exactly, the hardware. But Amr is the execution. It is the software running. It is the ongoing, continuous directing of those laws in the physical, tangible world.
The source notes provide a beautiful historical analogy for this word amr that really roots it in the human experience of the time.
Oh, the desert guide.
Right. It talks about the ancient Bedouin experience in the Arabian Peninsula and how they used a derivative of that word, amir.
Right.
Imagine you were a merchant in a caravan 1,400 years ago. You were standing at the edge of the empty quarter. It is a vast, terrifying, featureless ocean of sand. There are no roads, no signs, no landmarks.
It's completely overwhelming.
Exactly. And Amir was the designated guide who possessed the knowledge of the terrain. But the Emir didn't just point and say, go that way.
No, they couldn't.
Right, the Emir would physically walk ahead and place small stones or markers in the sand to delineate the safe path. The caravan survived purely by following those markers.
And the commentary applies that exact imagery to the cosmos. Amir is that active, ongoing guidance.
Placing the stones.
Exactly. It is the continuous placing of the markers, the unbreakable laws of physics, thermodynamics, gravity, to ensure that the immense complex caravan of creation reaches its intended evolutionary goal.
It fundamentally shifts the relationship from, I built this desert, to, I am actively ensuring you can navigate it.
It really does.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because I follow the logic, but I have to admit, I struggle with the CPU analogy on a human level.
How so?
Well, a computer processor is rigid. It operates on logic gates, ones and zeros. It is cold. If the universe runs on such strict, unbending law, where is the humanity in the cosmic motherboard?
That's a very valid concern.
Like in a human court, the law is rigid, but there's room for nuance. You might know the judge, or you might have a lawyer who can pull a string and get your speeding ticket thrown out because of extenuating circumstances. Does the commentary's version of the cosmic CPU allow for anyone to pull a favor?
The thinker actually anticipates that exact discomfort. It is a very human reaction to want a loophole,
Yeah, we all want an out.
We do. But the text uses that question to launch a radical redefinition of one of the most widely misunderstood concepts in religious philosophy, the concept of intercession, or in the original Arabic, Shafa'at.
This is a major turning point in the source material. Because a lot of traditional religious thought, across many different faiths, relies heavily on this idea of the ultimate insider.
Oh, absolutely. The holy lobbyist.
Exactly. The belief is that if you stand before the cosmic court as a proven rule breaker, a sinner, you don't have to face the absolute law if you know the right saint or the right prophet or the right holy figure.
Right. The idea that they will step in, intercede on your behalf, essentially bribe the judge with their own holiness and get you off the hook.
And the commentary vehemently, categorically rejects that framework.
It tears it down. It points out that if the cosmic court functioned via nepotism and string pulling, it would literally be the most corrupt, unjust system imaginable.
Right.
Think about the implications. If laws only apply to those who don't have powerful friends, that isn't justice. That's a mafia.
It's oligarchic.
Exactly. The absolute stability of the universe, the flawless operation of the CPU we just discussed, relies on the fact that the law is impartial. It bends for no one.
So the thinker has to answer the question, if Shafa'at, or intercession, isn't a holy lobbyist whispering in the judge's ear, what actually is it?
And the answer lies Again, in the linguistics, meticulous linguistics,
Sure.
the thinker breaks down the Arabic root of the word, which is shafa. At its most basic literal level, shafa means to make an odd number even, to pair things up.
They pair things up.
Yeah. If you look at how the word was used in an ancient judicial context, it didn't mean someone bribing the magistrate. It meant a credible witness stepping forward to stand with you to support your legitimate case.
Ah, I see.
You were an odd number one person alone making a claim. The witness pairs up with you, making you an even number, strengthening your defense according to the strict parameters of the law.
They aren't asking the judge to ignore the law.
No, they're fulfilling the law's requirement for evidence.
But the text takes that judicial definition and applies it directly to the physical universe, which I found fascinating.
Yes. When you apply Shafa'at to the CPU's operating system, it takes on a purely scientific meaning. Intercession becomes chemistry.
Chemistry.
It means elements combining, pairing up according to strict, unchanging laws to create an entirely new reality.
I immediately pictured a laboratory when reading this section. Think about water. You can't just take a handful of hydrogen, throw it into a room with a handful of oxygen, and hope for the best.
No, they will ignore each other, or worse, they will react violently if the conditions are wrong.
Exactly. But if they pair up, if they intercede with one another, according to a very strict mathematical proportion, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen.
H2O.
H2O. Only when they submit to that authorized law do they create the life-giving property of water.
And if the laws were subject to bribery, or if the judge could just change the rules as a favor, that chemistry would fall apart.
It would be chaos again.
Right. If the rules of intercession changed on a whim, hydrogen and oxygen might make water on Tuesday, and a toxic corrosive acid on Wednesday. The physical stability of the CPU runs the chemistry perfectly every single time without exception.
Which is reassuring, but it leads to another dilemma.
Okay, what's that?
If everything is just mathematical laws, unbending logic gates, and strict chemical pairings, does that mean the universe is static?
Ah.
Because a computer running the exact same program over and over gets predictable.
Yeah.
Are we just looking at a universe where the same atoms are just bouncing around in the same authorized combinations forever?
That is the logical next question. And the commentary argues that the reality is entirely the opposite. The universe is governed by static laws, but the output of those laws is highly dynamic and constantly evolving.
Okay.
And to explain how static laws create dynamic growth, the text introduces another incredible metaphor, the cosmic potter's wheel.
The source highlights a specific phrase from the verses here, right?
Yeah.
Yubadi al-kalkathuma yu'idu.
Yes, which translates to, he originates creation and then repeats it. Or, more accurately in this context, evolves it.
Evolves it. The thinker stresses that the creator isn't just a maintenance worker keeping the status quo running. The system is designed to actively add to creation, to expand it, and to constantly refine it.
The text leans on 2 specific divine attributes to illustrate this process, al-Bari and al-Musawwir.
And understanding the distinction between these two is vital.
Very much so. Al-Bari refers to the initial rough process. It is taking formless, raw matter and giving it a base, rudimentary shape.
Like getting the clay on the table.
Exactly. But al-Musawwir is the artist's work. It is the continuous, meticulous refinement. It is the act of shaving away the excesses, adding intricate detail, smoothing the edges, until a beautiful, perfectly proportioned, functional form emerges.
The commentary deliberately contrasts this dynamic view of the universe with classical Greek philosophy, specifically calling out the frameworks established by Plato and Aristotle.
Oh, that's a huge point of divergence.
Because in a lot of Greek thought, physical matter was often viewed as inherently flawed, base, and completely separate from the divine realm of perfect, abstract ideas.
Right, the physical world was just a dirty, static shadow of reality.
But the text we are analyzing fiercely argues for an active, hands-on designer who is intimately involved with the physical universe, constantly upgrading it.
Which, when you look at it through the lens of modern science, is exactly what we observe. Cosmology confirms the universe is constantly expanding.
Yeah.
Inside nebulae, old stars are dying, going supernova and forging heavy elements, which then coalesce to birth new, more complex star systems.
And on our own planet, biological life is constantly adapting, iterating, and evolving.
Exactly. The universe is a massive, ongoing work in progress, endlessly generating new, complex forms out of the raw, formless clay of the early cosmos.
And that brings us to the potter's wheel analogy, which is so evocative. The thinker paints this picture of a master potter in the ancient world. The potter takes a lump of formless, unshaped clay. He places it on the center of the spinning wheel. That wheel, in the cosmic sense, represents the orbits, the celestial cycles, the massive centrifugal forces of the universe.
And as the wheel spins, the potter uses his hands to apply pressure. He shaves away the excess clay. He removes the useless material.
And slowly, out of a chaotic lump spinning at high speed, a stunning, perfectly proportioned vessel is created.
The text even specifically mentions the highly prized, ancient, delicate ceramic bowls of molten to ground this analogy in something the audience would recognize as a masterpiece of human craftsmanship.
But the mechanics of the analogy are what matter here.
Definitely. The spinning of the wheel isn't just chaotic motion. The orbits of the planets, the rotation of the galaxies, that is the potter's wheel in action.
The physical, mechanical movement of the universe is the actual instrument through which the designer shapes reality.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? Because that precision requires tools, right? A potter's wheel is completely useless if it's wobbling all over the place, or if the potter has no way to measure its speed and rhythm.
You have to be able to track the spin.
Exactly.
All right.
And that brings up how the commentary treats the most prominent objects in our sky. It takes us directly into how the text analyzes the sun and the moon, not as gods, but as the gears and dials of that cosmic wheel.
The text focuses intensely on verse 5 of chapter 10, which describes the function of these celestial bodies. It states that the sun was made a shining glory, and the moon a light, with its phases precisely measured out so that humanity might know the number of years and compute time.
The linguistic breakdown in this section was a massive realization for me. The expert analyzing the text points out that the Quran uses two entirely different, highly specific Arabic words for the light of the sun and the light of the moon.
Yes. For the sun, the word used is Ziya, but for the moon, the word is Noor.
And the distinction between those two words is not just poetic, it is scientifically exact.
It is. Ziya means an intrinsic, self-generating light. It implies a source of energy that is actively burning its own fuel, like a raging fire, or, in the case of a star, a nuclear fusion reactor.
But Noor.
Noor, on the other hand, describes a borrowed, reflected light, a glow that does not originate from the object itself.
Which is astounding when you remember the historical context. Over 1,400 years ago, long before telescopes or modern astronomy, this text accurately categorized the sun as a self-sustaining generator of light, and the moon as merely a passive mirror reflecting that energy.
It even playfully compares the moon's light to makeup.
Makeup.
Yeah, it's like a luminous powder applied to the surface, but it's not intrinsic to the face beneath it.
I love that. But the thinker isn't just pointing this out as a fun astronomy trivia fact to prove the text is scientifically accurate, right?
No, not at all. The commentary uses this precision to make a profound philosophical point about the CPU of universal law. It points out that humans did not invent the calendar.
Wait, what do you mean? We didn't sit down one day and invent the concept of a month or a year out of thin air.
Exactly. We just discovered the math that was already running in the background.
Oh, I see.
We uncovered the mathematical laws that were already hard-coded into the solar system by the Arsh, the phases of the moon, the exact unchanging rising and setting of the sun, the solstices and equinoxes. These are predetermined markers.
So the creator built a flawless mechanical chronometer in the sky. The potter's wheel has a built-in timer.
Yes. And the text uses this reality, the fact that the stars and planets are just giant, glowing mechanical clocks, to absolutely demolish the concept of astrology.
Now, this is a crucial theme in the thinker's analysis. For most of human history, and even widely today, cultures have believed that the stars and planets hold mystical power over human destiny.
Right, like if Jupiter is in a certain alignment, you will become wealthy.
Or if the moon is in a specific phase when you were born, you are doomed to suffer a tragedy.
And the commentary opposes this with incredible force. It strips away all the magic and mysticism from the night sky. It says, look, these celestial bodies are blind, deaf, mechanical followers of physical laws.
They are the hardware running the CPU's programming.
Exactly. Their purpose is utilitarian. They exist to give us a stable, habitable environment, to provide energy through Ziya, and to give us a reliable way to measure time through Noor.
They do not possess the power to control your fate. We are not bound by the chains of the stars.
To illustrate this utilitarian view, the source shares an anecdote about rural life before the advent of technology. It describes how, before mechanical watches or smartphones existed, elders in remote villages used to be able to step outside in the middle of the night, look at the specific tilt, position, and phase of the moon, and tell you exactly what time it was.
The moon was a tool for them.
A literal tool. It wasn't a deity demanding worship. It wasn't a puppet master pulling the strings of their lives. It was a perfectly calibrated instrument provided for human utility.
Which completely shifts the burden of responsibility.
It really does.
Because if the stars are just glowing clocks, if they aren't puppet masters dictating whether we succeed or fail, if the universe is just this perfectly stable, completely predictable CPU running chemical reactions and orbital mechanics, who is responsible for our destiny?
And that question brings us to the ultimate crescendo of the entire exposition, the ultimate why.
Why did the Creator bother to build this incredibly stable, precisely calibrated universe?
Why code the CPU with such unbreakable, unyielding laws? Why spin the potter's wheel with such mathematical perfection?
Because it's clearly not just for the sake of having a really neat, orderly galaxy.
No. The answer the text extracts from the verses is profound, and it pivots the entire discussion from astrophysics to human morality.
How so?
The universe was built this way so that those who believe and do righteous deeds can be rewarded with absolute, objective justice. The Arabic word used is qist.
Quist. This is the part of the deep dive that really forced me to sit back and think.
It's heavy.
That argument is that the physical universe operates blindly on absolute law. Precisely so, a different kind of entity can be introduced into the system, an entity that can exercise choice.
The thinker explains the fundamental, unbridgeable divide between the physical world and the human domain.
Right.
The physical universe, the nuclear reactor of the sun, the dead rock of the moon, the atoms of hydrogen and oxygen we discussed earlier, they have no free will.
They can't decide to rebel.
No, they cannot choose to disobey the Arsh. They perfectly, blindly submit to the physical laws dictated to them. A rock dropped from a cliff cannot suddenly decide to fall upwards. The moon cannot decide it is tired and take a night off from orbiting the Earth. They are entirely predetermined.
But humans, we are the anomaly in the system. We are the wild card.
We are granted the terrifying gift of free will. We possess the unique capacity to choose.
We can look at the moral laws of the Creator and actively choose to align our lives with them, or we could look at those same laws and actively choose to rebel, to exploit, to destroy.
But the genius of the system, according to the commentary, is how those two worlds interact. Just as physical actions have objective, undeniable physical consequences.
Like if you put your bare hand into a fire, the unyielding law of thermodynamics dictates that your flesh will burn.
Exactly. Well, human moral actions have inevitable objective moral consequences as well. The text identifies this as the Law of Ayyam.
The Law of Requital.
The Law of Requital, yes. The thinker makes a profound point about the nature of justice here. Think about how we judge culpability.
Okay.
If a person is forced to do something against their will, say, someone physically overpowers them and forces their hand to pull a trigger, or someone is heavily intoxicated and entirely lacks reasoning capacity, we do not hold them morally accountable in the same way we hold a sober, premeditating person accountable.
Right, because they didn't really choose it.
True justice, absolute quist, requires the presence of uncoerced free will. You must possess the genuine ability to choose wrong in order for your choice to do right to have any moral value whatsoever.
And here is where the concept of the Arsh as a CPU reaches its absolute peak for me.
How so?
Well, the entire physical universe, the unbending laws of gravity, the meticulous chemistry of Shafa'at, the precise ticking of the celestial clocks is essentially a massively complex, utterly stable stage.
A stage, yeah.
And that stage was built specifically so that human actions could be accurately, fairly weighed and judged.
It is a brilliant deduction. Imagine the alternative. Imagine if the universe were chaotic. Imagine if magic were real and the laws of cause and effect could be suspended by whoever knew the right spell.
Moral accountability would instantly evaporate.
Exactly. If you intentionally fired a bullet at someone out of malice, but the laws of physics randomly changed mid-flight and the bullet turned into a harmless puff of smoke, you couldn't be judged for murder.
Because your action had no consequence.
Right. The absolute, unyielding physical stability of the universe is the only thing that guarantees your moral choices have real, predictable, measurable outcomes.
The source text leans into this heavily, asserting that nothing we do is lost. Every single thought, every hidden intention, every tiny action is preserved by the system and will inevitably bear fruit.
It doesn't just vanish into the atmosphere?
No, the CPU of the universe tracks the moral weight of our choices just as precisely, just as mathematically as it tracks the orbital trajectory of Jupiter.
That is exactly the synthesis the thinker is driving toward. The universe is flawless hardware running a flawless operating system, and human free will is the user input.
The user input.
The system processes what we input, and it returns exactly what we have earned, without bias, without nepotism, without a single line of corrupted code.
It makes human existence feel incredibly weighty. You aren't just an accident of biology wandering around on a rock. You are the very reason the entire stage was constructed.
Which brings us to the final critical point of the commentary. The verses conclude by stating that God created all of this in hack, in truth. And the expert analysis really drills down into what hack means in this context, contrasting it with abstract theory or illusion.
Yes, because there are various philosophical and mystical traditions, for instance, certain interpretations of the concept of Maya in Eastern thought that view the physical world as a grand illusion.
A mirage.
Right. Something dirty or deceptive that the enlightened soul must escape from to reach true reality. The source text insists on the exact opposite.
The physical universe is not an illusion. It is a solid, objective, deeply meaningful reality. It is hack.
The commentary shares a brief, incredibly striking historical story to illustrate this concept of grounded truth. It talks about a soldier during the time of Umar, the second caliph of the early Islamic Empire.
Oh, this is a great story.
Someone approached this soldier and asked him a deeply philosophical question. What was the reality or the essence of his faith?
And what is remarkable is what the soldier did not do. He didn't give a long, convoluted, abstract theological answer. He didn't quote mystical poetry about the nature of the soul.
No, he pointed at the physical world. He pointed to the literal fortresses they had secured. He pointed to the societal structures, the courts, the markets they had built based on their laws of justice.
He essentially said, look at the physical manifestation of order and equity around you.
Exactly. The commentary uses this to prove that truth isn't just an abstract idea that lives warmly in your head. If it is hack, it must take concrete physical form in the real world.
That is the ultimate takeaway from this massive exploration of the Arsh. The physical world matters. It is not a waiting room for the afterlife. It is the proving ground. The laws of physics and the laws of morality are two sides of the exact same coin, both administered by the same CPU.
I want to leave you listening right now with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We started this journey by imagining looking up at the stars in the dead of night.
Yeah.
Think about those stars now. They are immense, powerful, but they are utterly blind. They are just obeying their program.
That's hard work.
Think about the hydrogen and oxygen in the glass of water sitting on your desk. They are pairing up exactly as commanded, without choice. The vast cosmic CPU is running flawlessly, executing billions of lines of physical code every millisecond, keeping the wheels spinning without a single error.
The hardware is stable?
The operating system is secure. The stage is perfectly set.
And you are the only variable left in the entire vast equation of the universe.
It's just about what you choose to do next. You are the only thing in the cosmos that gets to decide its own input. Are your daily choices, your hidden intentions, your treatment of others, in harmony with the grand, stable laws of justice programmed into the cosmos? Or are you trying to fight the spin of the potter's wheel? Let that sink in.